Okay, welcome back to the Beginner's Guide Ghost Shooter tutorial video. So this is part 2 of creating this game and a follow-on long tutorial. So the first thing we're actually going to do is I'm going to show you how to open up your project that we started last lesson. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that you guys are in your editor.construct.net page. Now, for my classes personally, I've told you to bookmark this page, so you should just be able to open it up straight away. The next thing we're going to do is we saved our documents on the cloud in Google Drive. So there is an option over the side here that says cloud with a little folder next to it. I'm going to click that. Now, you're probably going to have to sign into your Google account again. So for me, this is my Google account. Make sure it's your school Google account, same one as we used last time. And then go find the folder that you've saved it in. So remember, I told you to make a computer studies folder. Therefore, I'm going to open up this computer studies folder. And it will be the file that says, whatever you called it, .c3p. All that means is construct 3 project. So you're going to click on that, and then you are going to click open. If you find that you have no files, everything is grey, please make sure that this set up the top says Google Drive. So make sure it actually says that, or else you're not actually in anything to open. So once you've clicked on it, you can then click open, wait for it to download, and there we go. Remembering last time, what we had done should be on the screen now. So last time what we did is we actually put our background in, we tiled it out, made it bigger, we put in our bullet, our monster, our explosion, and our player. Now, remembering all 4 of these are called what we call a sprite. So it's very important to remember that. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the names of these sprites. So at the moment, if I were to click onto my player and I come over into the properties bar, which if we remember is over on the left hand side of your screen, under name it is called sprite. Now, whilst you might remember what that is, if you were to have hundreds of sprites, you would end up having sprite 1, sprite 2, sprite 3, sprite 4, sprite 5, and it can get quite complicated when we go into making our events, so our coding in the behind of the game, and knowing the difference between each sprite. So we're going to call them what they are. So for your player, you're going to name them player. For your explosion, you're going to call it explosion. For your monster, you're going to call it a monster. And for your little baby bullet, you're going to call it bullet. Now, this is just going to make everything easier. You might have to relock your background just so we don't move that around. It's just going to make everything easier so that we don't have any mix-ups when you do your event sheet or when we do our coding behind. Okay, the next thing we're going to get into is something that we call a behavior. Now, I'm going to go through what a behavior is, and then I'm going to go through the list of the behaviors just so you can grasp a concept of what they do. So, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to click on our player. We're going to make sure that it's highlighted. We're going to come over to our properties bar, and we're going to scroll down until we hit the bit that says behaviors, add/edit, and then there's behaviors underlined in blue. And if you hover your mouse over the top of it, you'll notice my cursor changes from a pointer cursor to a little hand. You should be able to click on that and it should open up a box. You then have a box that says add new behavior. So we can then click in that and it should open up a bigger box. So what a behavior is it's a pre-built behaviors that we can give to our sprites. So instead of having to code certain things, we can give them these behaviors so that the code is already in there. It just makes it a little bit easier to create your game and do things like, if you want your character to move in certain directions, or if you want them to not walk outside of the layout, things like that. So I'm actually going to go through what these are. Now you're not going to use all of them, and I'll tell you which ones are more specific, but what we are going to use is movement, and we're going to use a bit of bound stuff. So for our player, we are going to give them 8-direction movement, which means that the player can walk in 8 directions. So they can walk left, right, forwards, backwards, and then all 4 of the diagonal directions too. That is all this means. So you can add that to your game. You'll notice it goes into the list. We are then going to add another behavior. The next behavior I want you to add, if you scroll down, it should say scroll to. And it looks like so. This behavior means that the camera follows your character if you decide to move. So it just means that, if you go off and you play your game and then you walk off the box that is shown in your screen, it won't follow your player until you add this in. So once you've added this in, it should actually move around with your player. So if I hit scroll to and just add that one in. The last one we're going to add to our player is what we call bound to layout, which should just appear straight away. What this means is, I'll just show you, when your character moves, they can't move outside the actual page, or what we call the layout. So it means that they can't go out into the abyss and walk off the page. So we're going to also add that one in. Then you can hit X, and that should be done. So if you go up to the top here, there's a little play button that you can click, and you should be able to, 1, move around, 2, the camera should follow. Sorry, you can move around with your arrow keys, not with WASD. It should follow you, and then if you try and walk off the page, you'll notice that's as far as I can go. It won't let me go off. That is all those behaviors do. After you've done this, you are going to hit this little button next to menu. It says Save Project. Click on that just so that we've saved it. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to give our other sprites some behaviors too. So we're going to start with the monster. Click onto the monster. Remember, we're going over into the properties bar. So add/edit, behaviors to add a new behavior, then add new behavior. Now, what we're going to give this monster is a specific type of movement. Now, if you come down to movement, so you'll see the little movement tab, we're going to actually give it what we call a bullet behavior. Now, if you think of what a bullet does, once it's shot out of a gun, it only moves straight forward. So this monster, when we give it a bullet behavior, is going to just move in one direction straight. So it won't be able to move left and right. It won't be able to move diagonally. It will only move straight. So we're going to click that to add it in for the monster. That is all we're going to give the monster. So you can then close out of that. Now, we're going to go to our bullet. Now remember, your bullet's really tiny, so try and find it on your screen. And we're going to, again, add behaviors. And we're going to add a new behavior. Now, we're going to add 2 behaviors to this one. One, you should be able to guess just from the name. We're going to add a bullet behavior. So, bullet into there. Again, a bullet only goes in one direction, so you only need it to move in one direction, therefore it gets the bullet behavior. Then you're going to add a second one. Now, because your bullet's going to destroy something, we're actually going to go down and we're going to go to destroy outside layout. Sorry, I've gone too far. Destroy outside layout. All this means is when it hits a monster, it will eventually be able to destroy it. Now, obviously, we have to go off and we have to code that that actually works, but we're just making the bullet be able to destroy something. We can close that, and that bullet is done. Next thing is your explosion. Now, the explosion only has one thing that it's going to do. It's going to pop in when it hits a target, which is your monsters, and then it's going to disappear. So what we're going to give it is we are going to go down until we see fade, which is this one here, which just means it's going to gradually fade away after it's showed up on the screen. Okay, there is a little bit of tweaking that we have to do with these behaviors because some of them have a default that we don't really want. So if you go ahead and click on your monster, and we're going to scroll down until we hit the behaviors tab again. Now you'll notice that you have new tabs here that say bullet, which is what we added as a behavior. Now, at the moment, the speed of our monster is 400. That is a very, very fast monster. Probably a little bit too fast. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to lower that speed down to 80 for me, please. And that means that the monster should be a little bit slower. I'll see if I can get him in frame just to show you. See how he's a little bit slower? Whereas if I were to keep him at, hold on, if I were to keep him at 400, you'll see how fast he goes across the screen in a minute. Look how speedy he is. We don't want him to be 400. He's going to be a little bit fast. So, 80 for me, please. Now, likewise, if we go into our bullets are typically very, very fast. They come out at an extreme pace. So, instead of being 400, we're actually going to make it faster. We're going to make it 600. Therefore, it actually feels like the bullet's doing something. And the last thing we're going to do is, clicking on our explosion, we're going to change the fade out time. So this one down here, from 1 to 0.5. We're just going to make it half because it's going to be a little bit slow to be 1 second, whereas half a second means it will pop in and pop out pretty quickly and should fade. Okay, now the last thing we're going to do for this lesson is whatever shows up on your layout is what shows up at the start of your game. Now, obviously what we're going to do is we're going to get it so that when you click your mouse, you shoot a bullet. When the bullet hits the monster, the explosion appears. So, when we first start up our game, we don't want to see our explosion and we don't want to see our bullet. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move those off of our layout and just move them up to the top for me, please. And that should be it. Now, the last thing we're going to do is go ahead and save our work. Super, super important. Make sure we're saving. Now, because we've saved the first time on the cloud, it remembers that. So it should keep automatically saving over the top. So again, you should just be able to come over near the menu, just next to it. The one that if you hover over it says Save Project, click that and it should be saved. Again, you'll notice it comes up at the bottom just to say it, and this goes into a grey colour and I can no longer click it, and you'll know that that's saved because of that.